It's Dina Dahl and Lisa Graves, and we are here to break down the latest judge order against Trump's deportation, whatever you want to call this new plan now, basically taking people from one country and sending them to another that they're not even from. We have Judge Murphy, who had ordered at the end of April regarding Trump's plan to send people to Libya, even though that's not where they were from. And he said in his order there, you have to give people meaningful chance to contest this deportation when you're sending them to a third party, a party they're not from anymore. He pointed out in there also about the fact that they were not even giving notice to the immigrants in the language in which they speak. They were giving it in English. A lot of people cannot speak English. So not only are they not giving them a meaningful chance to hire a lawyer, but they're not even doing it in a language that they can read. Well, sure enough, just this week, Trump decides to go ahead and send immigrants to Sudan, even though they are not from there. So Judge Murphy, in a hearing, calling out the Trump administration for what they're doing, saying you have violated my court order. Evidently, they gave a 12-hour notice only, 12 hours. No chance to talk to lawyers, only in English yet again to a country they're not from. I mean, devastating, obviously, for them and their families, but also illegal, according to the judge, and finding that this may be a probable cause for criminal contempt. So, Lisa, you've been following a lot. I mean, we talk about uncharted territories. We're in a situation only a few months, and second judge to say that federal officials may be in criminal contempt for violating court orders.
Yeah, it really is extraordinary to see the way that this administration is thumbing its nose at court orders. As you point out, Dina, this is a case where the federal district court judge had already issued an order about the procedures in this circumstance. And the First Circuit Court of Appeals had upheld that judge's order just last week. And in the face of that order, and that was order, as you mentioned, was about sending them to Libya, the administration decided to send them to South Sudan, which is experiencing an extraordinary civil war. Millions of Sudanese people have fled the country, as well as millions of people relocating internally within that country. So it's an extremely unstable circumstance. The previous version of the civil war there in Sudan resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people over this past several years. And so it's an inherently unstable regime. There are leaders competing for control of that country. And it just seems extraordinarily cruel to remove people from the United States who are in U.S. custody and move them to a country that is in such a deep state of chaos. But also, what we've seen from this administration is this claim that the people who they removed are bad people, that they are criminals. We've heard that claim before. They've sort of trotted that out, for example, regarding Kilmar Albrigo Garcia in Maryland, who was never convicted of anything. It does seem as though in this case, the individuals who were removed had deportation orders, but that's not the end of the story. Under longstanding U.S. law, including under the Convention Against Torture, you cannot remove people to countries where they would face persecution or murder. Even if they can't stay in the United States and be free in the United States because of the removal order, the deportation order against them. That doesn't mean they can just be dropped into a hellhole, whether it's in El Salvador or Sudan.
And that's the purpose of it, right? I mean, the two men, there's more, we don't know the details of everybody involved, but the two men we know details of, one is from Vietnam, the other one is from Myanmar. And they're not sending them back to their country. They're sending them back to a place that they're going to be trapped in a civil war, right? And isn't that the point? They are giving basically life sentences to people for, even if you illegally came into this country and have a valid deportation order, like that's not what we under the law have as a consequence to that, right? So that's what makes it particularly bad. And then we have seen, of course, that they are doing it to people even that have legally crossed into the border. I think there was some new reporting about some of the people that were sent to the El Salvadorian prison. About 50 of them had come in legally through the app. So this is a scare tactic. Everything he does is a reality show. This is scaring people, but the consequence is to those people and their family. This is not something the United States of America and our laws have ever been willing to do, right? But of course, this is what they're doing. We're seeing justices stand up to it. And I thought your point about the circuit court affirming them was very important here, especially with the Supreme Court hearing we just heard regarding nationwide injunctions. And John Sauer, the Solicitor General, the Trump lawyer that argued in front of the Supreme Court, not even conceding to Justice Amy Coney Barrett that they would be willing to follow, right, an opinion of the circuit court. And here, that's making it very clear. And it really, I think, for all of us watching, when they were trying to argue, oh, one judge shouldn't have so much power, even though the way our law works, that often is facts. If you and I go to court, one judge has a lot of power over us. But, we always kind of knew that's not really what it was about. They just are trying to discredit our justice system. And so you see that here with the circuit court. It's not even about, whether or not Judge Murphy is a Biden appointee, even though he is, because you have the circuit court, it's no longer just the one judge, but they're ignoring now the circuit. Which is what it just is, I think, a major escalation from the showdown here. How far is Trump willing to go? And for those people, because I know we get a lot of comments where people say, well, who cares if they're losing in court? They're losing in court all the time. Trump is still doing what he's doing. Like, this is not enough. And sometimes our justice system does work slowly, right? I mean, you could work at it both ways. Trump is saying our justice system is too slow. This is why we need to send people out for 12 hours. And we're like, not so fast. We need due process. This slows it down. And the opposite is true too. The judge talking about having a criminal contempt, proceeding perhaps. That's going to be slower than we like because we're going to end up giving them due process. But I think, and I'm interested to see what you think, Lisa, I think that these lower level officials that are defying the court orders will face consequences, maybe not as quickly as we want, but I don't think they're going to be able to really get away scot-free with it.
Well, I think that's right. Trump is acting in a way that has been emboldened by John Roberts due to that immunity decision, that unprecedented decision that John Roberts orchestrated last year to keep Donald Trump from facing the criminal consequences of the indictment against him for his activities around January 6th to try to subvert our democracy, to try to stay in power even though he lost. And so Trump is acting in this emboldened way, but that immunity from criminal prosecution or criminal consequences does not apply to people below him, to the people who report to the people that he's appointed. I was really shocked, although I suppose I shouldn't be, but I was really shocked by DHS Secretary, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's comments just yesterday, I think it was, when she claimed that habeas corpus means they can just remove people, when in fact that's the opposite, as the senator has pointed out, that the Constitution provides that you cannot suspend this writ of habeas corpus, which allows people to go to court to challenge their detention or challenge their imprisonment. That applies to citizens and immigrants, as we talked about before. Mm-hmm. And in this instance, you have a circumstance where under longstanding U.S. law, and I helped rewrite the asylum rules a couple decades ago. Oh, wow. So awesome. I have looked intensively at asylum law, the rules against torture, the Convention Against Torture that the United States is a party to. And, it is the case that there's sometimes instances where a country will not accept a person returning, a deportee, basically, because of whatever reason. But under U.S. law, under the statute, there are rules that the government has to follow to give people notice, to be able to say, even though I can't be removed to my home country, for example, I can't be removed there because this other country, because I have no contact, no relationship with that country, and I would face, the risk of death or persecution. And so there is a due process both in the Constitution and in the statute that applies to these individuals. And even if they were someone who was not under just a deportation order for being unlawfully present in the United States, but even if they had been convicted of a crime, a serious crime as asserted by the administration, you don't get a death sentence in another country as a result of that, or a torture sentence. But that when someone finishes their criminal sentence here, if they can't stay in the United States and there need to be arrangements for them to be removed from the United States, there's a process. that the government has to follow by constitution and by statute. And in this instance, as you pointed out, and as the judge suggested, violating that order, that people receive due process notice and an opportunity to be heard, that is a fundamental right. And the administration seems to have violated that and is facing potential contempt challenges. And even I think one of the men involved is illiterate. So not only couldn't read the paper in English before him, but also, it was in whatever language it was in, he wouldn't be able to read it. And 12 hours or 17 hours, or let's just say 24 hours, that's not enough time for people to get to talk to a lawyer, to make sure that their rights are protected, that they don't get basically a death sentence by this administration because of its arbitrary and capricious decision to just remove them without following the court's orders.
And I think the criminal contempts do make a difference because there's some career officials there who are going to have to carry out the directive from above to ignore court orders and go ahead and deport. And that person may not be willing to get themselves caught up into the criminal, prosecution for it. And sadly, that's our hope, that career officials do the right thing. The judges have told you what the right thing is to do. And this is, I think, a moral, ethical, and legal right thing to do. And so we will continue to follow this, Lisa. I'm so glad we got a chance to talk about this. It's so important. The depravity just continues here with Trump. If you have not subscribed here on Legal AF, press the free subscribe. You will get all the updated videos. And Lisa and I will definitely come back and talk about this more.
Thank you, Dina. A joy to be on with you. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.